Dr. Nakasone, I take it, pride yourself because of the work you do, not just with the FBI, but your active participation in the scientific community in this area at large, to know what's going on around the world in the area of speaker identification.
Yes.
And you've already said that among the people that you work with, there is a consensus as to certain kinds of voice samples that are suitable for forensic analysis.
That is correct.
So your decision in this case wasn't based solely on your personal view about what samples are reliable or suitable and which ones aren't.
I strongly believe my opinion is supported by my colleagues in the scientific communities.
Let's talk about, first of all, the suitability of the samples you have in this case, which boils down to the screaming, the cries for help on that recording. When you evaluated it, I know from what you said that you took the total amount of the speech and you said that was about 18 seconds, give or take.
That is correct.
Out of the 45-second period from when the screaming started until the apparent gunshot.
That is correct.
So you distilled that to 18 seconds, and then when you removed the, would it be fair to say, the masking noise or overlapped speech, you had considerably less to work with. In fact, it was under 3 seconds.
That's correct, 2.53 seconds.
And are you saying that it was only 2.35 seconds that could in any way be considered suitable? And I don't mean suitable that it was suitable, but that's what you had to start with to make that decision.
Yes, that was cleanest area if we attempt to do any kind of analysis, not for just voice ID, but any kind of analysis.
When you say that you would like 30 seconds or a minute up to 3 minutes of speech for an analysis, are you talking about normal speech or screaming speech?
Normal, natural, conversational speech.
And why is that? What's this notion of phonetically balanced speech?
The computer takes statistics of dynamic variation of somewhere around 1,000, a little bit over 1,000 different speech features. And to formulate sufficiently statistically significant models, it takes the speech sample which contains very extensive phonetic contents. Say like in English, thank you very much. In English, there are 44 different sounds. We call them phonemes. And before those 44 phonemes to occur reasonably, it takes for a while. One word maybe produce 3 different phonemes. So like when I say, S is one sound, A is another. Last part of the Y sound or E sound will be third phoneme. And say someone says help. You have about 3 different kind of sounds, 3 phonemes, H, L, and the P sound. Now, for the entire phonemes, reasonably, comprehensively, and before it happens, we need reasonable speech durations. And that varies depending upon the vocabulary of the individual use. And by doing empirical studies, we determined that somewhere around 30-second speech samples would carry well-balanced phonetic contents.
Are you saying 30 seconds of what you've characterized as normal speech?
That is called in conversational speech.
Not conversational speech,
Yeah.
not someone yelling help over and over for 30 seconds.
If someone continues to yell with the same, phonetic content for 30 seconds, we can still count as one word or 3 phonemes. And that's far less than what is being required to do meaningful scientific, analysis.
So when you talk about the duration, the 30 seconds, and I think you said maybe sometimes even if it's only 15 seconds, maybe, or 16 seconds, maybe you can do a voice analysis. If it gets to be 14 or 10, it's very questionable. You're talking about the duration of normal speech that would contain as many of these phonemes that you're talking about.
That is correct. Let me be a little bit clear about the distinction between 30 seconds and 15 seconds or so. If I continue talking like this for 30 seconds or so, and then record it, and then when we analyze, my 30-second speech sample contains a lot of pauses in between, hesitation pause or a syntactic pause, and those pause doesn't carry too much information, and after those were removed, you will end up with having core or bulk of speech informations, and that would become usually either to 70% or 50% range. So if you have 30 seconds of natural spoken speech, it's fair to predict you're going to have 30 seconds. 15 seconds. Mm-hmm. But you have to measure that after you complete, this extraction of the silence and the pause areas. And if you have, say, 15 seconds, probably examiner would feel comfortable going to analysis. But standard operating procedure mandates, if it's, say, a 10 second or so, examiner has to call it quit. Mm-hmm. Because our empirical study indicates the error rate would go up if we utilize too short of speech samples.
So if I hear what you're saying, if you have 30 seconds of normal speech, by the time you get rid of the pauses and hesitations and such, you may have only 15 seconds left that you can then analyze.
That's the typical scenario we get into. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Is there any amount, well, let me back up first. When you listen to recordings such as the one in this case, are you trying to reach a decision whether the person is under high stress or even in a life-threatening situation?
We assess whether it's normal or deviates from normal range, and examiners are usually have been already exposed to variety of recording conditions, and he is allowed to make that judgment.
You heard the calls and you heard the screams in this case yourself. You did the work.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And did you consider the person screaming to be in a life-threatening situation?
Yes, it was uttered under extreme emotional state. Facing that situation?
Yes.
Very extreme, emotional state.
Does that make it extremely challenging for you whether there can be any kind of further analysis at all?
Actually, along with our report, we talked to Tampa FBI field agents who submitted this case because he asked. I recommended him not to attempt to record an active screaming voice for this particular case.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow what you said. You recommended that there be another recording or not?
No, I recommended FBI agent that he would not attempt to record an active screaming voice for this particular case.
Let's help the jury follow this a little bit. You told the agent not to attempt to do a reenactment recording for use in this case. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Voice comparison, I take it, while you haven't said it precisely today, is once you get your unknown sample processed and prepared and ready to analyze, the analysis is by comparing it with a known sample of a person's voice. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So you don't ever do the analysis just listening to the one unknown voice on its own, correct?
When we were giving only unknown voice, we are not doing any voice comparison. However, we will be evaluating whether this particular unknown voice has a, is sufficient information in it for us to do, future analysis if we were given another voice samples we have to compare with.
So your decision to tell the agent out of the Tampa office, basically don't bother trying to do a reenactment, was because no reenactment under basically such different circumstances could possibly give you an exemplar worthy of a reliable comparison.
We believe it would be extremely difficult to recreate the same situation. It's not just, the scream voice. It just doesn't have a, raised pitch. Something else is changing too. Scientists believe that potentially there might be some physiological or anatomical structure could be different. When they are different under specific conditions, this resonance mechanism can change too. And since it's not really easy to recreate in the same situation, we don't believe as scientific communities we can recreate these unique situations. It doesn't happen every day. It's difficult.
Screaming in this context is, you're saying, physiologically very, very different than talking but really loud.
That is correct. It's a completely different type. And the scientists do not know exactly how they are different.
So there's really, if I hear you correctly, there's no amount of screaming speech, whether it's 2.53 seconds or 10 seconds or maybe 30 minutes, that would be suitable for the kind of voice comparison analysis that we are able to do now in the current state of the art.
That is correct.
You also said, I believe, that because, I'll connect the dots here if I heard you correctly, because of the physiological changes that come about when someone screams under very high stress in a life-threatening situation, for example, that it has such a profound impact on the way they sound that you can't in any way reliably say how old the person is that's screaming.
I don't think it would be possible to determine the age by listening to that extreme type of voice.
So in other words, the screams that you heard on that 911 call could be made by a 27-year-old, a 35-year-old, or even a 50-year-old man under similar circumstances.
Under similar circumstance, it's very, very challenging. And the scientific community may not attempt, not only myself, attempt to guess or estimate age of the person who is screaming.
And you can't do that in this case.
I did not attempt.
And you didn't attempt because, based upon what you know from your own work, what you know from being a member of the scientific community, that to do so would be a fool's errand, that you can't come up with a reliable scientific opinion because it's screaming, someone screaming for their life.
In my opinion, that's the consensus among the scientific group or members.
I think with all of that, what you're saying is science really doesn't help us in this case figure out who's screaming.
Unfortunately, that is correct.
The best chance, if any, in your mind would be based upon lay witnesses that have familiarity with the voice of either George Zimmerman or Trayvon Martin or both.
That is my opinion. Yes, correct.
Are there still the same challenges because it's very limited speech, because it's under high duress, because it's in the background, and the kinds of things that you've talked about already?
Layperson of familiar voice recognition would be the best, here. But as you mentioned, yes, there is a challenge, and that challenge would be characterized by the fact that this person has a familiarity. The question is, would this person is in possession of the information about specific perceptual features that they can extract from that yelling and screaming to the same features they can retrieve from their memory about their loved ones and voice who were producing the audio information under the same situations.
So the same situation is still an issue. In other words, you're saying if they can connect something they hear in the recording with something that they know is familiar, that's the best chance you're going to get in this case of someone being able to identify the voice.
It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but somewhat, under similar conditions. Yes.
Would you urge caution to this jury as well in that sort of analysis, trying to figure out lay witness testimony that say they can identify the voice because of all the things you've talked about? Would you urge caution in listening to the opinions of the lay witnesses and suggest it really needs to be in the context of the case?
Judge, I'm going to object. He's asking him to comment on what the jury should consider.
The judge will give the instructions to the jury at the end of the case when the evidence is complete, and those are the instructions that the jury will follow. Your objection is sustained.
May I have just one moment, Judge? Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Madison.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Please, Your Honor. So, Doctor, what I understand you to say by specific perceptual features is the best type of person to make these sorts of judgments, even on a sample like this, is someone who's heard the potential speaker under sort of similar circumstances.
That is correct.
So they've heard them upset or in distress before.
Yes.
As far, would you say that they would have that kind of listener would have an advantage over someone who's never heard the person upset or in great distress before?
No, it's fine, I'm sorry.
I think the person who has heard same features from both voices would be more reliable than individual who claims he is familiar with certain people, but everything what he heard from this particular person are coming from a normal type of conversation.
Thank you. You referenced talking about standards of desiring 30 seconds or that sort of thing of speech and words. That was as it relates to, and I just want to make sure that we're very clear on this point, all of those standards and things like that, those were as it relates to your desire to conduct a computer-assisted or an algorithm-assisted examination, not the sort of lay listener type approach. Am I right about that?
That is correct.
Okay. And as far as this idea of, because before I leave that point, I think I heard you say earlier that, for example, if you were talking on the phone with your mom, it might only take you a word or two.
That is correct.
Okay.
Doesn't take too long, a few seconds.
And as I want to go back to this idea of examiner bias and why you as a scientist try to avoid it. As I understand it, in an ideal, you try to make things as a scientist as ideal as possible, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you work you attempt to control as many variables as you can. Do you think that law enforcement techniques or practices or things of that nature mirror what should go on in a laboratory?
No, we do not have any saying about what they do unless I'm specifically request to give them guidance, but otherwise usually say like we prefer the voices will be recorded by a high fidelity microphone tape recorder, but most of the voices we receive were recorded by a variety of random recording devices. We take them all.
And just so I'm clear on this concept of what you refer to as the potential bias, again, you were talking in context of having a scientist who conduct what you called an unfamiliar voice analysis, the computer-assisted or that type of identification where you don't know or have never heard the supposed speaker's voice before, right?
Yes.
Okay.
However, though, that happens also in the voice lineup situation. We recommend to FBI agents when we asked.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sorry.
May the witness finish his answer.
Certainly, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Doctor. Were you done yet?
No, he wasn't done yet.
Please avoid your comments.
Yes, Judge.
Go ahead, Doctor, you may continue.
I said the effort guide them to remove any bias effect happens not only to the technical analysis for unfamiliar voices, but also it is equally important. The same, safeguard against bias would be as important in the familiar voice recognition as well. To remove risk of bias and also to improve the credibility of the results of this, identification procedure.
If I heard you about voice lineups, you're talking about a situation where possibly a victim of a crime is asked to come down and listen to potential suspects say what the perpetrator said? Is that what you're talking about, a voice lineup?
Yeah, that would be part of that too.
Okay.
But sometimes it happens there's not enough, quality in the very lengthy, voice recordings happening in the, federal cases. And I recommend only thing they can do would be to find somebody who are familiar with the voices, and then advise them if they have, say, 3 or 4 potential individuals who presumably familiar with the voice, advise them to have each listen to the recorded voice of the target individual separately, one at a time. That's part of my recommendation. Okay.
If we're talking about the potential for bias, that is exactly what it is, right? A potential?
Yes.
Okay. If I were to have you and another person familiar with your mother's voice listen to it together, are you worried that that would compromise your ability to recognize someone with whose voice you are so familiar?
Well, there's always a chance.
Okay.
I might get compromised.
When you say there's a chance,
Yes.
it certainly doesn't mean it's going to happen, does it?
Objection, leading.
Ma'am. If two voices at hand we have to compare are so obviously different, or so obviously same, the chance of examiner bias might be lesser than the situation in which two voices sound alike or very difficult to analyze. And I think the examiner's human, they have a tendency to sort of follow the leader. And that happens, and the bias issue is a very serious, topic embedded within the scientific working group for speaker recognition as well. It's a very serious issue.
Does bias work both ways? And by that I mean, if you go into it not wanting or assuming that you're not hearing the same voice, does it?
It can go either way.
Okay. As far as familiar voice identification goes, understanding the frailties of this particular tape, understanding that what you've said is the more scientific computer-assisted method doesn't provide us with enough here. Did I understand your testimony to
Yeah,
be?
that is correct. Because the computer, there's no way for the computer to contain all sorts of features coming from the voice it's analyzing. It's just a one-shot analysis.
So if you've only got that one shot, the best person to do it is someone who's heard that voice under similar circumstances.
That is correct.
Thank you. No other questions?
Very briefly. At the FBI lab, you don't limit your analysis just to the computer, the automated speaker recognition. Is that correct?
That is correct. Our approach is called hybrid approach. It's a method of automated speaker recognition by computer supervised by a trained examiner. And this means the numbers regurgitated by the computer alone cannot be utilized as a source of a report. The examiner will be conducting his examination independently from computers, because human can extract some features that the computers cannot, and vice versa. So always those two components moving together. It's called automated speaker recognition with human in the loop. That's another term.
You always have a trained examiner listening, in other words.
That is correct.
And your examiners are trained in the various methodologies available for speaker recognition.
That is correct. The computer cannot really assess whether input and voices are produced under inference of article, or computer cannot tell right now whether the person was happy, sad, or voice was produced under abnormal duress. So to detect all of those, we have to depend upon the trained examiners. So these two components must go hand in hand in our practice at FBI.
You mentioned that the spectrographic analysis was a method that was employed more in the past than currently. And the FBI does not currently use that approach, is that correct?
It was used up to last year. FBI modernized the speaker recognition technology on May 15, 2012. So examiners would not use spectrographic voice comparison anymore for the purpose of voice comparisons. It's been replaced by the advanced modern computer software.
Mm-hmm. Based upon your knowledge that the event in this case occurred on February 26, 2012, is there any methodology that you're familiar with that would include the oral perceptual methodology, the spectrographic analysis, or the automated speaker recognition software approach that the FBI now uses that would be suitable for analyzing the screams that we had in this case?
No.
Thank you, Doctor. That's all I have.
May you redirect?
Suitable suitable for scientifically generating a report under your protocol. When you say there's no suitable methodology, is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
There was no technology or scientific device, algorithm, software were suitable to analyze the particular voice we had. But that would not preclude familiar voice recognition by the individuals who are familiar with the voice.
Thank you.
Thank you. May Dr. Nakasone be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, sir. You're excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is this a good time for a recess, a break? Okay, we'll be in recess for 15 minutes.